on the edge of the galaxy, in a system far removed from the political squabbles of the greater empires, there existed a small planet known as Vespera. The planet was an outpost on the fringes of known space, inhabited by a race of ancient aliens known as the Veyr. Their civilization was old, but their resources were limited, and their once mighty empire had long since crumbled into ruin. Among the last of the Veyr, there lived a woman named Seris and her young daughter, Nara. Seris was once a member of the Veyr aristocracy. She had been married to a nobleman of high standing, and she lived in a palace overlooking the crystal lakes that dotted their homeworld. But all of that had changed when her husband, the man she had loved dearly, was murdered in a coup. Her life, once filled with luxury, became one of hardship and sorrow. As the widow of a fallen noble, she was seen as a liability to the new ruling faction of the Vere. Her exile was swift and cruel. She was cast out of her home, her wealth stripped away, and her title erased from history. The only thing she had left was her daughter, Nara. With no home and no resources, Seris was forced to flee to the outskirts of Vespera, where she and Nara lived in a small, makeshift dwelling built from the remnants of old machines and discarded technology. Life was hard, but Seris did everything in her power to protect her daughter from the hardships they faced. She taught Nara the ways of the old Vere traditions, trying to keep alive the memories of a time when their people had known peace and prosperity. But Seris could not shield her daughter from the harsh realities of their world forever. The planet was on the verge of collapse, and food was becoming scarcer by the day. Vespera's once glorious cities had turned to rubble, and the surviving inhabitants, including Seris and Nara, were forced to scrape by, living in the ruins of a dying civilization. They were nothing more than outcasts in a society that had forgotten them. It was on a day when the situation seemed most dire that everything changed. The distant rumble of engines reached Seris's ears as she sat beside Nara, teaching her how to weave a simple cloth. The sound grew louder, and her heart skipped a beat. A ship, no, a warship, was descending toward their village. At first, Seris feared the worst. The Vere had always been at war with neighboring species, and the ruling faction often sent patrols to hunt down the remnants of their own people, exiled and forgotten. Seris and Nara had lived in constant fear that one day they would be found and eliminated. But this time, things were different. As the ship touched down, it became clear that it was not a patrol from Vere's government. The insignia on the side of the craft was unfamiliar, a symbol she had never seen before. Before she could make sense of it, the hatch opened and a figure stepped out, a human soldier dressed in heavy armor, with dark, piercing eyes. Seris stood frozen in place, unsure of what to do. The soldier walked toward her, his steps steady and sure. He raised his visor, revealing his face, handsome, with strong features, and a look of determination. His voice was firm, but not unkind. "You are Seris, exiled noblewoman of the Vere?" he asked. Seris blinked, surprised by the question. She nodded slowly. "Yes. Who are you? And what do you want with us?" The soldier's eyes softened as he glanced over at Nara, who was hiding behind Seris's legs. "I am Lieutenant Kael from the Earth Coalition," he said. "I've been sent to rescue you." Seris's heart pounded. "Rescue? But we've been abandoned. There's no one left to help us." Kael shook his head. "There are more of us out there, and we're not as far away as you think. I was sent to find you, Seris. I know your story." "How?" Seris asked, her voice trembling. "Why would anyone care about us? We are nothing to the Vere anymore. Perhaps not to the Vere, but to the greater galaxy. You are something," Kael said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've heard of your people's plight, and I've seen the suffering you've endured. But you are not alone anymore. I'm here to offer you sanctuary." Seris could hardly believe what she was hearing. The idea that someone cared about her and Nara seemed like a distant dream, a fantasy from another life. She had grown so used to the loneliness and despair that she could scarcely imagine that things could change. But Kael's words were not just promises. They were a lifeline. As the hours passed, and he explained further, Seris learned that the Earth Coalition, a powerful alliance of human worlds, had been watching the decline of the Veyr. They had knowledge of the Veyr's fall and the oppression of their people, and they had sent Kael to find Seris and bring her back to safety. He explained that there was a place for them on Earth, a place where they could live free from the tyranny of the Veyr's new regime. In the weeks that followed, Kael worked tirelessly to help Seris and Nara leave the wreckage of their world behind. They journeyed together to Earth, a place that was so different from everything Seris had ever known. Earth was full of bustling cities, diverse cultures, and a sense of hope that Seris had long since given up on. As time passed, the bond between Kael and Seris grew stronger. She found herself drawn to him not just as a rescuer, but as a man who saw her not for her title or her exile, but for who she truly was. Kael, too, found himself captivated by Seris's strength and resilience, her unwavering love for Nara, and her beauty that remained despite the hardships she had endured. One day, as they walked through the bustling streets of a city on Earth, Kael turned to Seris and asked, "Would you stay with me, Seris? I can't promise you riches or a life of luxury, but I can promise you a life of respect and love. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Seris's eyes as she realized that she had finally found a place where she and Nara could be safe, loved, and accepted. She had been lost for so long, but now she had found a new beginning, a new family, and a chance at happiness. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." And so, with Kael by her side, Seris was no longer the exiled princess of a fallen empire. She was a woman reborn, ready to build a future with the man she loved and the daughter she cherished. Together, they faced the future with hope, knowing that love and family could survive even in the most uncertain of worlds.